Oh, hello.
Hello!
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
Just a minute.
All good.
Okay. I gotta shut down the stream. I'm watching you. Reading echo. Yeah, I just sat there and listened to you being very patient. That was pretty cool. That was your first call in?
Uh, I had called one person before that today, so yeah. But like today is my
Oh,
first day
okay.
doing that.
This is
I
the
guess.
first time I've seen you as a streamer. So
Yeah, I'm not super big.
I'm a streamer. I guess they would say a small streamer, but we're uh the only full indigenous stream on Twitch. We
Oh,
came in with
super cool.
DJ Indian and some of the professors from Twitch.
hmm
So I actually teach decolonization
That's so cool.
and quantum theory, and I was a militant activist and a veteran. So like that's all I
Wait,
got,
you teach quantum theory?
Yeah, well, I'm a researcher.
Oh,
So
that's okay. Well, all of those things sound super cool. Um,
yeah, I don't
So
know it. This
basically, at any given party, you could just like melt the brains of somebody with quantum physics.
Yeah, it never fails. It's always can you show us how light works? Yeah, okay.
But by the way, for the sake of people in my chat, pronouns.
I don't really have any. It doesn't matter.
Okay,
Uh, I'm Cree. Arcadian Cree, and in my language, we don't have gendered pronouns. So,
that's super cool.
yeah, we tend to they everyone.
Gotcha.
So, we have a kind of a when people ask us to use gendered pronouns,
hmm
we have to tell them that they're actually forcing us to gender them.
Do people do that? Like I
Yeah,
mean, like people are like, oh, you called me they, please call me she.
yeah, yeah.
Really? It's so
And
weird.
we actually have to sit down and say, okay, we don't have gendered pronouns, so yeah, you're actually forcing us to gender you, and is that what you want? Like
hmm
we actually have to ask.
Is that because like Cree tend not to have like a concept of gender?
We have gender roles.
hmm
Well, no, not really. We have 8 different gendered identities and sexualities.
Oh, that's really cool. Okay, so can you
Mm.
tell me more about that?
Yeah, I can't give you all the names. It's a bit difficult, but
hmm
we have the woman who is the man,
hmm
who is also considered father and husband. Okay, which would be like a transgendered man.
Yeah.
We have a person who's both,
Okay.
so hence they say two spirit,
hmm
and that's a whole different class of human.
And when you
Um,
say that, what does that mean?
they're considered, you almost want to say more than human, more than they're just not or they're extraordinary. They're gifted,
Gotcha.
and they have their own unique and innate perspective, and they
hmm
naturally sort of emerge. So we make a big deal out of them. You know? We
I
have
think I think that's
the man
beautiful.
who takes the role as a woman, and he's also mother, wife, auntie.
hmm
Um, we have, I guess, what you would call. We don't have the word homosexual, but it's just someone whose partners are always of the same sex,
hmm
and that's their own relationship. And then we have, I think in English they would say it's literally transvestite.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm.
So they are, I guess, in this sense, cisgendered and wear different clothes.
They would dress as a woman or a man
Okay.
and socialize that way among what for them would be the opposite sex.
hmm
It's called a Kukuwa. It's not always it's not always cool.
Okay.
That's the sort of tricky one,
what
you know.
what makes it tricky?
Traditionally, you have a moon lodge for the women, the menstrual lodge, where the women will sit together, and these are biological women
Mm-hmm.
menstruating. Also, I believe the transgendered women will come in as
Mm-hmm.
well. Um, and that's just the woman's time. They do their work, they do their thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And a Kukuwa would be like a man who would dress as a woman
Gotcha.
and fake having cramps so he can go to the women's lodge, which
That okay.
traditionally, the story of it traditionally is the women loved it, but the men got really upset because they were
Huh.
like, "What are you doing?" You know. Um. But that's considered a kind of an orientation in and of itself. So,
Okay.
a man who can kind of be in the woman's space,
Yeah.
during
Yeah.
this time where she's biologically being female, if you will.
Okay.
And yeah, it comes with a very long story, but they consider that is the woman's time, the woman's space, and if they want them in there, then that's it,
Okay.
So, but it's considered an orientation. That this man kind of wants to be around women to the point where he'll actually pretend to be one.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, but that is
Yeah,
distinct from like the transgender woman equivalent.
very much so, because he's definitely his biology, if you will, and his orientation would be his cis man, right?
Okay.
A straight man, whatever you call that.
Yeah.
But he and it's not always a man; it can be a woman too.
Okay.
But their sort of affinity, and that's how we see things, is it's an affinity,
Okay.
and his affinity is different. Yeah. It's considered
Interesting.
orientation. Yeah. So we have a couple of interesting things. So there's of no use to have gendered pronouns.
Mm-hmm.
We don't stick the pronoun in the front either. We just say it's, so it translates as um, they all the time.
Interesting.
You'd
Cool.
only say he or she if it mattered.
Right, if it was like
Like,
gender specific.
right, you had 5 kids, and you'd say, I'd found the 4 girls, but where's the boy? Where's he at? You could say
Mm-hmm.
that, you know.
Yeah.
Um, If you were a grown adult, there's the word napio, esquazi. You can say that's a grown adult woman, grown adult man, but you wouldn't stand around and he, she, them all the time. You would just, they, you would still call them they,
Okay.
you
Yeah, it
know.
sounds
So,
sounds cool.
yeah, I guess it's a little different take on gendered pronouns, but so we have to ask twice, what are your pronouns? And then we have to have that conversation and then find out whether they accept a they or how do they want to
Is,
handle it. But
is that something that would be done like right when meeting someone, or is it something that would be done like on a more personal level, like after you've gotten to know them?
back when we could meet face to face,
Mm-hmm.
we never asked unless somebody told us. If you present a certain way, we just believe you. That's what you are. You know, if we say the wrong word,
Mm-hmm.
we expect you're going to tell us what the right word, and we just accept it, and that's it. Because we meet the person,
Mm-hmm.
not the label.
It's
So
kind of wild
online,
thinking about that in
I
our
know, I know.
colonial
On
context.
mhm. Online, you have the little convenient statement or disclaimer, I guess you could say, so it makes it easier. But we still make mistakes. We
Yeah,
still mess up. Everyone
as one
does, I
does.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can have women that are rather masculine,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll just, one of us will just keep saying he. Oh, sorry, but we
It'd
don't
be
care. Can I put
yeah.
it that way? We actually don't care what your gender is. We're hunter gatherers.
Mm-hmm.
We have no religion, only a philosophy. We
Is
have no
that
state of any type.
is that common among like
Nope,
no?
that's not common at all. We're very unique. We have polyandry,
Polyamory?
polyandry,
Uh,
and
Not familiar.
polygamy.
Oh, gotcha.
We have both. So a man could have 5 wives, a woman could have 5 husbands.
Huh.
The children belong to the father's clan. However, in terms of equality, it's total.
That's really
So,
cool.
yeah, we're very, very kind of unique. We're one of the few, I think there's 1% of populations or cultures that have women that have more than one husband routinely. So
Yeah.
us and someone in Tibet, I think, are the only people that ever had that going.
Interesting. How is like the I guess tribal governing structure? What's that like?
Now we used to live in bands, so we don't have tribes. We were very large. We started the fur trade, so our relationship was with France, not England or America.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually, what happened is as they give you colonial status, we had to make. We're a sovereign nation, so we had to create a grand council,
Okay.
which involves the headmen from all of or women from all of the bands. So the woman chiefess who started Idle No More, she was part of that council.
Okay.
So Teresa Spence. So the Crees are all over the place in Canada, but my people were also Acadian, so we have that whole eviction by the British part of our history.
Right.
So we're in the U.S. and in Quebec. Our government recently, we ended up suing the Hudson Bay Company for back pay and won, so now we own it.
Hey, awesome.
And Quebec has given us back our entire holdings, traditional holdings.
Wow.
All of it, including hydroelectric, everything is ours again, and we're full sovereigns. We have no agent. So we're now full sovereign, which means we have the right to enter into treaties nation to nation.
Oh,
And
wow.
the Acadian evicted and Métis people who were evicted were given our status back in December 2019.
Wow.
So we're the massive land back success, but nobody knows about us.
Yeah. So what? I guess what do like? Are you still technically a part of Canada? If you have full sovereignty?
Canada's technically a part of us, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we're a sovereign nation of Quebec, which it simply makes us. They are recognizing that they have occupied sovereign territory because the French recognized us like that from the beginning. So the Commonwealth of Canada, the British governorship of Canada has recognized that as well, that they have occupied a sovereign territory.
Okay.
So, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, so can you? I imagine maybe you have some thoughts on like what happened in the U.S. over in Kansas. Are you
Oklahoma?
Yeah. Sorry, Oklahoma.
My doctorates both placed me directly involved with tribal law and treaty law and international law. So that was a main part of my work, was assisting on that petition that Oklahoma had for a long, long time. It went up 2 years ago and it didn't pass, and we knew that it would pass the second time.
Okay.
So it was 2 years ago. So, when they appealed, it was basically jurisdiction and jurisprudence. It's always been the main issue. In other words, the U.S. tribes, nations, right, in the 1800s were then stripped of their rights to negotiate into treaties as sovereign. So there are only 374 treaties in the U.S.
Okay.
Right.
Wow.
Congress can modify them at will. They can also revoke the right to even have a reservation.
Okay.
So that's the horrible thing about that. But if Congress has not revoked that right, the Supreme Court judge made his decision. He said, you know, you didn't revoke the reservations, right?
Mm-hmm.
You gave them this treaty. You didn't modify or alter the treaty. According to the treaty, this territory belongs to them. That's it. Land back. Boom, that fast.
So
He
like,
recused himself 2 years ago.
oh,
He didn't want the political backlash.
gotcha.
This year he got in and said, you know, and this came right after Trump had revoked lands from, I think, 2 different nations, including the Wampanoag, which were the original Thanksgiving people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
which was shitty. I mean, you know,
everything he does. Yeah.
He wants those casinos. I'm not gonna say I know Donald Trump, but
really?
I've had to engage Donald Trump 3 times, because once he complained that the Seneca or Iroquois weren't going to give him a casino, and so he actually went to a hearing to complain about this.
Wow.
Where he was such a joke that the judges, like, they were having a difficult time just even, you know, they were like, this is frivolous. Right? And his whole grounds for his complaint was, well, you know, they don't look Indian.
Oh, okay.
And one of the judges leaned forward and said to him, what do you think, what do I look like to you? Like, can you tell what I am by looking at me? And then he looks Caucasian. So Trump had said, I would guess you're this and that. And the guy says, well, I don't know what it was, Jewish or some other ethnicity. And they were like, get out. So we were involved in that one. Then he came to the Gulf Coast where I was living most of my life in New Orleans. We're technically considered Cajun in the U.S., so we have our land there. So we get hit bad. We lost everything in Katrina. Fine.
Yeah.
He comes down and wants to buy up all the casinos. So the Mississippi people ran him out. I don't know exactly what he did. But I was there when they had this grand meeting. It was up in Jackson, and they just literally ran him out. He was back on that plane. So we had to deal with him twice, being told, no, you can't have a casino, Don. Sorry. And then what does he do? The Wampanoag had just got a $1 billion casino, broke the ground, and he revokes their land rights so he can get his hands on that casino. He hates us. He hates us. He hates us. I'm telling you.
And people say he's not racist.
He's not racist. He hates us because we have casinos and he can't get one.
Yeah.
He's not even... To be a racist, you have to be a human being first, and it isn't there.
True. I'll give that to you.
So he's not mature enough to care about... You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Just wants his toys, damn it, and that's it. And that's it. That's it.
Yeah. So
he wants to have the best toys.
What are the ramifications of Oklahoma being returned?
Oklahoma not returned.
Freed?
Oklahoma, the issue in Oklahoma, jurisprudence, which is, I have to go to Supreme Court cases or hear them constantly, and this is our unique issue. Because we have, at this point, sovereign status, however, we can't negotiate into treaties. Okay, we don't have jurisdiction in our own lands. So, because those reservations were set aside by agreement with states.
Okay.
Finally, the Supreme Court decided the states have nothing to say about this. So no more states involved. Okay, well, they continuously interfered because their jurisdiction was cut. They said, well, we agreed to host this, and now you're telling us we have no say. And they said, yeah, because the last time the state had something to say, it caused the Trail of Tears. So it was those natives who are in Oklahoma who have petitioned. The Creek, Choctaw, Osage, Tahlequah, and I believe Chickasaw. Okay. So they have always been there. All right. So what happens is there's a sexual assault,
Mm-hmm.
and the reservation that is there says, okay, every time we have a sexual assault, some FBI comes in and you pull us out and prosecute us outside, which you can't do. Second, every time one of you comes over here and does it, we have to extradite you. All right, because we're not considered a state in our own right, which we're not. We do not have a nation state. It's not going to happen. So here it was, the issue of, I have jurisdiction to prosecute this crime on this reservation or not. Well, let's take a look at what was given to you when the reservation was created in the first place. So they go over the whole treaty, which I have pulled out, the whole treaty.
Mm-hmm.
And it says right there, can exercise its jurisdiction, its schools, its whatever, da 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 da. In other words, so the crime should have been prosecuted properly through local authority, reservation authority.
Okay.
Okay. And it results in a review and a validation and an affirmation of the treaty that established that reservation, which happened to include half of Oklahoma originally.
Okay.
And so our jurisdiction was restored fully.
Oh,
So
wow.
that does not mean that people who have been living there forever have to leave. That's ridiculous. It means that anywhere in our reservation, if you commit a crime now, right, and that's the whole area, you're going to get prosecuted twice.
Okay.
Potentially. Potentially. Depends on what kind of crime.
What I have no knowledge. What would that look like?
That would look like, now it's 5 nations now. It used to be 1. Now it's 5 nations. Anyway, that's another story. 5 nations. So that's what that is now. So let's say you're there where the Chickasaw have their communities, and you get in there and you commit a crime. But the Chickasaw police are going to arrest you. Right. So you go to the jail there. You get processed there. Okay. That's not federal penal system. That's reservation penal system.
Okay.
Right. So they're going to do it their way because our way of justice is different.
Yeah.
We don't have punitive. We have reconciliation. So they're going to decide what they want to do. And then they have to decide, do they want to report this to the federal or state level or not? It's a whole different decision-making process. The jurisdiction is going to have to be determined, and they're going to do it case by case, but it's going to probably come out a lot better, right, if you go through their court.
Right.
Because you could even have maybe seriously harmed someone or killed them. And if the tribal court, as they say, decides that they want to handle that in a traditional manner, they will mediate. They actually bring the victim's family and friends and bring the perpetrator and the survivors together to decide collectively what they want to do.
And is that what reconciliatory
That's what
justice
reconciliation is. It's
okay.
where the perpetrator themselves have to look at the damage. They have to see the damage. They have to face the survivors or the victim, right? All right. And sort of society, then, if you want to put it that way, comes together and mediates for as long as it takes to determine what is the best thing.
Okay.
In other words, this person would say, for what I've done, I feel remorse and I feel like, I should do that. And they actually do something, and they actually have the survivors sit there and come to some sort of agreement. And they don't always, because sometimes the perpetrator is just a malicious person. Really malicious, and they don't care. There is nothing that can be done. So you've made your choice, right?
What are like some of the common punishments, I guess, or common?
Well, We don't have punishments. We do have code of laws. I mean, we try to basically we do follow our relationship is directly to the federal government, specifically Department of Interior and the Supreme Court. So we're going to follow federal regulations in all cases. We may or may not follow state guidelines. When it comes to criminal justice, this has always been a massive issue for us. We didn't have the jurisdiction, so how can we therefore enact criminal justice systems? We do have tribal police. They're federally regulated, so they have, it didn't matter when they would come in and try to resolve a problem, the federal agent would show up anyway. So that stopped. So for us, you're arrested, you're brought in, you're processed the same way everyone else is. We have to figure out, first of all, where did you come from? Like, are you a resident? Are you a registered member? We have to know who you are. So they're going to run your background the same as they do everywhere else. And then that determines actually what that process is. So you could be a drifter. You could have come in from Seattle and you stopped in Tulsa, right? And you decided, whatever you did, okay, you got arrested. All right, so we're going, well, you know, we have a choice. We could prosecute you here, and then you're going to serve time, or we're going to figure out what is the best. You stole money. Okay. Can we take you to court and order it that you give it back? What are we going to do with you? Or we can say we're going to send you back to Seattle.
Gotcha.
Okay, we're going to extradite you. So we have to make choices that states don't have to make.
Gotcha.
You know, punishment-wise, we don't really have punitive systems. Most of us don't. Some of us do. Choctaw definitely do. They are pretty black and white about it.
Okay.
I mean, you mess up there, ew. Now they have Philadelphia and Mississippi, so yeah. So
what does that mean?
That means that these 5 nations are going to have to decide on a penal code that's going to be enacted and then enforced, and they're going to have to do it by consensus. But since they're all very different people, that's what I'm waiting for. That's what I'm waiting to see. I know the Choctaw very well. I know the Tahlequah. They're not the same people. The Tsalagi, the Eastern Cherokee, not the same people. They don't handle things the way the Tahlequah do. Chickasaw, Osage Creek, very different.
Are they all generally on good terms? Like, what? I guess what's
the
internation?
No, they used to be. Oh, I'm sorry. I may talk over you.
Oh no, I'm just wondering, like, what the internation like relationships are like.
You might be surprised. Originally, the Creek and Choctaw and Tsalagi were in a war that was so thick, so ferocious, that none of the American colonists could even pass through their territories.
Oh, geez.
So they call it the Creek War.
Okay.
Muskogee Creek, which is Oklahoma. Okie from Muskogee. Okay, that's Muskogee Creek.
Yeah.
Chickasaw, Choctaw, Tsalagi Creek. I think Osage. Maybe even Kickapoo were all involved in it. It was massive. The Tsalagi, somehow, I think because they actually had a British treaty that actually sort of awarded that nation all of the Appalachians. Well, you can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. The Choctaw were down there with the French. So you had basically a British Indian versus the French Indian. Boom. And the colonists there were like, holy shit. They had no idea these friendly, civilized Indians could come at each other that way. And so it finally resolved amongst intertribally. There was an accord. And now they're all really cooperating together as nations for the very first time, which is amazing.
Like what?
Because they're historic nemesis to each other.
what was it kind of banding together in like just the court system
Well,
or
the case of Oklahoma was so long, drawn out, and difficult, and the Choctaw are brilliant in court, and they kind
Mhm.
of stepped up and took the lead. I don't know if you've ever met them, but when they're they have a lot of different chiefs that sit together,
Mhm.
and when they get together, man, that is so intense. And when they decide, I mean, it's done. It's at night,
Yeah.
so they're really, really good in court. I had to work with them when Philadelphia was considered a reservation and they wanted to have a casino and they tried to question how long they had been there. And I had this background in paleoarchaeology, genetics, all this. So I had to go work with the chief advocate for them to say there's one, it's too blah blah, but there's one telltale trait in a human that can tell you how long they've lived in an area.
Mhm.
I said, can you go back and determine that this trait has been present in the living Choctaw today? And if it is, then they've been there for at least 30,000 years. Period.
Mhm.
And he found it and presented it, and they won their case.
That's awesome.
Indisputably, they had been there for longer than any other known people. Well,
What aren't you good at, by the way? Like
oh,
background in
everything else.
paleoarchaeology
No, I do.
and
Well,
quantum physics and
yeah, it's all the same related interdisciplinary field. I got to do a lot of really cool things, but it took years of intense work
oh,
and,
and
3 jobs through college. It wasn't like, I just looked at and read a book and thought I'll take a degree. It was a pretty intense. But that was an interdisciplinary research tract. I had to go to private college, etc. They were not messing around. So we
well,
got to
neither
do
were
a lot
you
of
by the
things.
sound of it.
No, and when I do something, I do it totally. I don't just kind of study something or hobby something. So I need to be a professional in that field or I'm not happy with it. So I know a lot about what I know, but I don't know anything about anything else outside of that. But yeah, that was one of the cool things. I happened to be at hand, as they say, and
Mhm.
this guy contacted me through my university. And I was always a researcher, so as a consulting researcher, I have to look up a lot of really strange things for forensics to give people a legal case or legal grounds. So
Mhm.
that involves all that. Forensics involves all that.
Right.
You have to kind of be able to research things you've never even heard of, okay? So I think that's how I came out the way I did. Anyway, so they get their case. They are super good in court,
Mhm.
and they're indefatigable and indomitable.
Mhm.
They don't lose. They took the lead, and now you have land back in Five Nation.
That's
Um,
awesome.
but they're not going to be chasing white people out. No, that's not the case. That came from the Seneca, who had a 99-year lease, and they declined to renew it, and literally all the white people living on that land for 99 years, fortunately, had to leave. They never bothered to do the title search on the land to find out that it was a lease.
Really?
Yeah. So they
Wow.
took it to New York Supreme Court. New York Supreme Court said it is your responsibility, period, to understand the status of the land when you build a home, when you put a home there. And you neglected to do that.
Yeah.
And the Seneca are not stupid. So by the way, they did not sell New York for beads. Okay, they leased Manhattan.
Mhm.
Manhattan is still on that lease.
Really?
Yes,
What does that mean? Like
that means that the the agreement could be rescinded.
what would happen?
Um, Nunavut in Canada came because there was a lease and the land, what they call, I think it was Northwest Territory or British Columbia. Okay.
Mhm.
So there was a lease that had to be renewed, but at the time the agent simply couldn't arrive where the by agreement, the headman had to sit and receive him. And anyway, when he got there, the pen was frozen. I mean, it was just stupid things. So they just said, no, we're just going to decline. And Canada had to go, oh shit. They just had to give it back legally. Give it back. Now it's none of it.
Wow.
So shit happens, is what I'm saying. Not all of us weren't savvy enough to know how to sort of lease to make an agreement. All right, and
Right.
some of these leases we've declined to renew them. That's all. So
Gotcha. Wow.
those people, yeah.
Out of
Oklahoma
curiosity,
case.
why don't many of the do many of those leases get like declined by the nations, or
No,
is there like some sort of
no,
negotiation to renew them
they're
periodically?
usually renewed. It's usually a mutually beneficial renewal.
Okay.
In the case of the Seneca, they had the opportunity to build billion-dollar international casinos. Okay, they were like, sorry, it's our land. We need it back. Do you mind?
Mm-hmm.
And the funniest argument was this poor man. I was like, oh, oh. And his family had built that house 100 years ago, whatever, within that lease term. All of his generational ancestors had been buried there. He had a family cemetery. And so he's telling these chiefs, my family is buried here.
Mm-hmm.
You can't kick me out. And the Seneca turned around and said, really? Our ancestors have been buried here for thousands of years. You had no problem kicking us out of our own land. So when we get our ancestors back, you can have yours back. And I'm like, that's got to be the ugliest confrontation ever.
Yeah.
Oh, it
Oof.
was horrible. Horrible. So a lot of people remember that. When they saw land back, they first thought, oh, Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
it's kill Whitey time. And I went, no, you're not. These are not the same people. And this is not a lease. Okay.
Right.
This is, hey, you told us that we had jurisdiction over this territory. We're asking you to uphold that decision. And the court said, we're going to uphold that decision. You now have jurisdiction. You need to build your police stations and jails and figure out your code.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I'm waiting for. And I think it's going to be very interesting. This is the first time these nations have come together as sovereigns.
The chat has points out, I guess, or I guess brings up a point that maybe you can address. In Canada, most of British Columbia, the Maritime Provinces, and a large swath of eastern Ontario and Quebec sit on territories that were never signed away by the Indigenous people who inhabited them before Europeans settled in North America.
Mm-hmm. Sit on territories that were never signed away. That's true. And the Cree of Quebec got all of their territory agreed to be entirely theirs.
Does Canada just choose not to address these things in court, or like how is that how is that just
in Canada they'll say we're treaty Indians.
okay.
So they can open up treaties. They can continually negotiate and modify things.
Mm-hmm.
Right? In the US they can't. Right? So when they say treaty Indians, I mean especially the Cree in terms of education. I mean, they know their treaty law in their sleep, backwards and forwards. Mm-hmm. They know every single item. It's amazing. And when they have a dispute, from what I understand, the Cree have been pretty successful. The Métis were recognized. They got themselves recognized. I mean, there have been some major successes, but from what I understand, it's an ongoing struggle. And there's a lot of outright, blatant discrimination, I guess you're going to want to call it, real resentment. And they lose a lot. They fight a lot. It's constant constant, and their population, according to statistics, is really small.
Mm-hmm.
We're all disagreeing with that. We think it certainly must be larger than 2.2 million. It's really small, and all of it in the hinterlands, you know.
Mm-hmm. Do you
So
do you have any insight on the situation up in Nova Scotia with like the Micmac or the Mi'kmaq?
yeah, we're involved in that. It's like I said, that is an ongoing struggle.
Yeah.
The maritime areas, it's complicated. It's not just the Mi'kmaq,
Mm-hmm.
and they know it, and everything has to be negotiated. Everything about what they do has to be negotiated with several other parties involved. I think there's 4 or 5 independent parties that are involved in the situation, and then there's so many layers of jurisdiction.
Yeah.
So they're trying to go to the top to get. They want a decision. They want a decision. They need one. They need
Right.
some resolution. So they're going to get the resolution. All right, and everybody now is just like, we just don't know what that's going to be. And the feeling is that, you know, you get is that it's not going to be favorable.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the feeling. I think there's a lot of doubt.
I was reading
But
about like
it has to be settled. It just has to be. It just has to be. It's time.
yeah.
Because nothing can function. The whole thing shuts down. You can't, you know, it's got to be settled.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all holding our breath. I don't know how anyone else feels about it, and it's gotten ugly as it does.
Yeah.
Mi'kmaq though,
I covered like there was attacks on like lobster fisheries that
sure,
were worked by members of the band.
sure, yeah. So they're kind of facing, I guess, what American colonists were facing. um,
Yeah.
um, it's got to be resolved. That's it. It isn't just them that are affected, and they know
Mm-hmm.
it. And we're very reciprocal people. We don't just stand alone and act like what happens to us doesn't happen to others. We understand that anything that happens to us affects everyone,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to be responsible for that. Um,
What do you think like an ideal solution would be?
for
Like
the Mi'kmaq,
for the Mi'kmaq, yeah. Like it seems like like you were saying a particularly nasty situation.
you know, I mean, ideally, I mean, it's almost the same with all indigenous people in the Western Hemisphere. We're such good providers
Mm-hmm.
that if you leave us alone and let us do what we do, we're a real asset.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same for all of us. So in all cases, stop regulating and restraining them. Let them do what they do. And everybody will benefit. We're collectivists. We're not even communists. We're closer to Bakunin. You know, we're like anarcho-collectivists. Okay.
Yeah.
We just love the work that we have to do to sustain our way of life. We love it. It's not
Mm-hmm.
work. We're tremendous providers. Tremendous. We're generous, charitable providers. We will give without being asked. I think the Mi'kmaq just ultimately, it's the same. If the state is simply not going to recognize us as vital contributors, which is ridiculous because who fed them when they came here? Shit.
Yeah.
So, they just won't recognize our ability or capacity to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's because they don't want us to compete. Okay. If they would just recognize our potential, what we can do. And they
Yeah.
have historical, it's evidence in history, what we're capable of. I say we, indigenous people, the Mi'kmaq. So, who helped found Acadia, which is, you know, where my direct ancestors were part of.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, they just let them do what they do.
Right.
Then they would improve things even for the other parties concerned. But the maritime, what do you want to call that? Regulations or whatever,
Yeah.
it is what it is. So you have to have a solution that satisfies everybody. Well, when are you going to get one that satisfies everyone? So ultimately,
Right.
yeah, best choice would be to not only let them do what they do without the restrictions, but invest in them
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's probably not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately. Um, well, do you have anywhere that you could direct people to find more resources, or where
Yeah.
they can
Well,
follow you?
oh, you can follow me. I stream every day, but depending on what aspect, in my Discord, you're going to find current events, you're going to find American Indian movement, you're going to find an annotated bibliography on decolonization.
Awesome.
It was written for a program that you can download. If you want to start with decolonization, you could start with that bibliography. That's part of the Human Rights Practice Program
Okay.
at University of Arizona.
Can you
Um,
drop
mhm.
me a link to your Discord and I can
Yeah,
drop it in
I can.
chat?
Yeah, I can drop it in chat. I'm gonna call it up. Hold on. And anything else specifically,
Mm-hmm.
Mi'kmaq, you seriously, it's all over the place. Anywhere you want to see it, you'll find it. That's my Discord.
Oh,
Uh,
can you drop it to me in Discord, because it does,
yep,
links don't show up in chat unless I or my mod posts it.
there you go.
Awesome.
Sorry. Oh,
No,
I'm
it's all
sorry.
good.
I did. I booped it. Oops. Yeah, I know. I left links on mine. But
Um,
anyway, that's the Discord where if you look in, it says the folder is research.
yeah,
And
awesome.
it literally is research.
Thank you.
Hi, Sue. This is Miko Lasu.
Hello.
Um, if you want to know anything more specific, the Mi'kmaq, like I said, they've got the media attention now, so you could look it up anywhere.
Yeah, I
Um,
had just been I talked about it a couple weeks ago, one of the incidents up there, but thank you for so much like insight into a lot of these things that I am woefully undereducated on.
oh yeah. Um, and what I do is I teach also language and traditional stories. So if anyone's interested in actually hearing our stories, you can come visit me. But you're going to hear stories in a way you've never heard before. So
Intriguing.
yeah,
And your Twitch channel?
stream is Universal Discourse.
Okay. Yeah,
So if I
so
type my name in,
head over to Universal Discourse if you want to learn more about all this stuff.
yeah. And I teach it and I help people do the research. It's very difficult. There's so much of what we have that's not in the media or not documented. It's really difficult.
Yeah, I imagine it. Is it also difficult, like organizing and collecting oral histories and stuff like that?
Well, that's actually what I do.
Oh,
For me,
okay.
no, that's not. A university solicited me because I could go
Hmm.
to reservations easily. They kind of recruited me off the powwow highway, literally.
What is the
A
Powwow
powwow
Highway?
highway. Powwows are held all through the nation, all through the year, and so those of us who are performers, we literally caravan powwow to powwow to powwow. We live in sort of caravans, and
Oh,
we
okay.
open it. Yeah. So I've been doing that 7 years, and this university director, program director, found me and realized I was a linguist and I had all this whatever. So they solicited me to go collect stories and songs and oral tradition. I
Well, that
finished my doctorate in applied linguistics and American Indian studies, doing that, and then went into evolutionary linguistics, quantum theory, and treaty law, international law, and decolonization.
was the quantum theory just for kicks and giggles.
No, I started as a, um, oh my gosh, how would you? No, I started with that. Quantum theory, there were some problems with, anyway, Roger Penrose, Stuart Hameroff, John Joe McFadden, those are my colleagues
Hmm.
for my research. So we dealt with wave function collapse,
Okay.
field embedding. If anyone knows anything about that.
Can't say I know a ton, I'm
Well,
afraid.
the theory goes into consciousness and it goes into quantum computing.
Oh, is
So
that like when
Chomsky
you
also
observe
looked at
something, you
right,
change the outcome?
right. So Noam Chomsky was involved with some of that. So uh,
Awesome. Cool.
yeah, yeah,
Wait, do you know Noam Chomsky?
yeah. He reviewed my dissertation proposal. Um,
Well, can you let him know if he wants to come on a no-name Twitch stream sometime? I would love to have him on.
no, he probably would. It depends on what you're asking him to talk about.
Honestly, just about
Anything.
anything.
Do you like his political theory?
I find it very interesting. I don't actually know all that much about how anarchism would be like implemented, and I hear he has some interesting ideas about that. I'd love
He
to
does.
pick his
He
brain.
does. The older he gets, the nicer he gets, and the more honest he becomes.
I've watched him talking a lot recently.
Okay.
It's amazing how sharp he is.
Sharp. He's, even when he's wrong, it's brilliant.
Right. Like just like that's a that's a good point. I wish I was smarter. Thank you.
You get that way from you're open and you're willing to learn without bias and judgment, which means you have to encounter and engage with some things that even morally
Hmm.
would, uh, you know, curl your toes. You just have to be fearless in your pursuit of knowledge, and you have to be very willing to, because we only learn after 99% of the time, point 0.9, we've been wrong. We're only
Right.
right once, and that's learning. And so you just have to be willing to be really, really wrong and keep going, and you'll be, quote, smart.
Well, on that note, that feels like a wonderful note to end on. Thank you so
Great.
much for giving me so much of your time today.
I thank you so much for letting me call in. We just found you, by the way, following. Um,
Aw,
your
follow you
name's
back.
cool, and I love the way you handled that young man. And we hope to see you around in the Twitch
Yeah,
universe. So I'll let you go. Yeah, I'll
likewise.
let you go. You have a good night or good day.
You too. I need to get to sleep pretty soon, but thank
Oh,
you
I'm
so
sorry.
much. No, it's okay. It's okay.
I hope to
I'm
see you again soon. Good night.
likewise.
We say
Good night.
Kiam. It just means let it go and go in peace.
Oh, thank you very much.
Okay, I'm gonna dip out.
Bye. That was a wonderful time. I very much enjoyed myself, everybody. I feel like I learned so much. My brain has swelled 3 times its normal size.